Hello guys, gals and gamers, and welcome back to another video made by me, a future cult leader. But don't worry, it's not one of those scary cults, it's more like a cult of personality. And that personality just happens to be the lazy villagers from Animal Crossing. So, it's gonna be fairly chill. But while we wait for that future to happen, let's talk a little bit about shiny Pokemon. One unfortunate reality about modern shiny hunting is that you just can't shiny hunt everything, because some Pokemon are shiny locked. Now, this term basically means that some Pokemon in the games are coded not to be shiny by the developers. A lot of the time when people talk about shiny locking Pokemon, it's always very negative, because I understand people want to get this cool legendary dragon at the end of the game, but unfortunately due to those devilish developers, it can never sparkle for you. So why does this happen? Why does Game Freak implement shiny locks in their games? Well, let me explain. The first reason on this list on why shiny Pokemon can't exist sometimes, why Pokemon get shiny locked, is that those Pokemon just simply are not future proof. Imagine playing through a game, hunting for a specific Pokemon because they're unique, they're special, there's something really cool about them. And then you get it. It feels great, doesn't it? You get this special Pokemon as a shiny, and then when the next game rolls out, you realize that that Pokemon doesn't exist in the game anymore. And I'm not just talking about Greninja not being part of Pokemon Sword and Shield. I'm talking about this Pokemon will never leave its game. We're talking Pokemon like Ash Greninja, Cosplay Pikachu, and the totem Pokemon in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, where they were just one-off forms, never even considered to be added into future games, and can't even be transferred to Pokemon Bank or Pokemon Home. Those Pokemon are made to be shiny locked, because otherwise Game Freak would have to, keep adding them in future games as well, adding support for these special forms that they have. And in order to not do that, they just shiny lock them. You can have them in this game, you can have Cosplay Pikachu in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire and enjoy it. Hey, it's cool. But after that, you can't. And this next one is a little bit of a conspiracy theory when it comes to Pokemon fans, and that is many people speculate that Game Freak, the developers of mainline Pokemon games, sometimes leave a Pokemon shiny locked so they can later on release the shiny form as an event. And yes, this has been known to happen a few times in the history of Pokemon games. But at the same time, a lot of the Pokemon that have been shiny locked, for example, one of the first Pokemon to be shiny locked ever, Victini, has never really gotten the shiny form officially released. So I'm not sure how much this theory holds water. And one thing that definitely does not happen is that Game Freak would not release a shiny or give us a shiny, so Pokemon Go can have the shiny later on. That has sometimes happened, like Pokemon like Genesect or Jirachi, who have been very difficult to be obtained in mainline Pokemon games, have been available in Pokemon Go. That is a factor that has happened. But it doesn't really make sense when you think about Game Freak gets a lot of money from the Pokemon games. Shiny Hunters are very niche, and also Niantic makes Pokemon Go, a different company, and Game Freak doesn't really see that much money from Pokemon Go, so it doesn't really make sense business-wise to do. But one thing that does happen, speaking of Pokemon Go, is that they do this very, very, very often. Whenever new Pokemon are released into Pokemon Go. Like, I think Hatterene is getting released fairly soon in Pokemon Go. Its shiny form is not yet available, but later on in some other event, it might become available. And yes, this is exactly what those conspiracy theories were talking about, but it's happening very often in Pokemon Go. But mainline games, I don't think this is so much a case. Now for the next one, and unfortunately you will have to think in this one as well. I know you're a Pokemon fan, so you might not be used to thinking too much, but let me take you on another brief story. So you're playing through a Pokemon game, you're having fun, playing through it for the first time, and you are almost at the end of the game. You've been playing the game for 30, 40 hours and you're about to hit the climax, going against the big bad of the game. And hey, there's another legendary counter on the way. What do you think a game designer, game developer, what do you think they would want you to do in that situation? A is, go through with the big final battle and battle through the team leader bad guy and capture that legendary and feel the hype of the moment. Or B, save right in front of the legendary and reset the game for 30 hours until that legendary dragon's eyes are a little bit different colored. Yeah, of course, the correct answer would be A. Just play through the story. So that's another reason why Pokemon sometimes might be shiny locked, is because of story reasons, story importance. Next reason on this list is kind of a rarer one, but did you know that Pokemon have value? Not like real life value, hopefully. You won't be selling like your Giratinas on eBay and scamming little kids. Please don't do that. But Pokemon do have some sort of value. That's why Pokemon like legendaries or shiny Pokemon you see as higher value Pokemon. Meanwhile, a random Bidoof that you just caught off from Route 1 is a very low value Pokemon. And this is completely intentional. And that is reflected very much in the fact that even to this day, Pokemon is a 30-year-old franchise or something like that. And we still don't have games with multiple save files. And that's why, for a lot of people, when they encounter something like a legendary, they encounter it just once. And to maintain Pokemon having some sort of value, for example, a shiny Pokemon that was previously obtainable as shiny, being shiny locked in this game's just to maintain kind of a value. You got a shiny Reshiram a few years ago and you can't get it anymore, so rises up in value. And some Pokemon need to be valuable for maybe you want to do an event, or maybe you want to market a DLC later on, or maybe do something entirely different. But Pokemon sometimes needs to do not giving out legendaries to every game or locking shiny Pokemon or two, just to, keep up some Pokemon, valuable. Next up is, for what I would say, one of the positive effects of shiny locking, and that is to prevent players from messing up. And this is basically, at the start of a game, you don't have Pokeballs yet. It would really suck if you were to encounter a shiny, right? It would also suck if a opponent character would have a random shiny Pokemon. Because, it's a shiny, it's a rare thing. You want to capture it for yourself. But Game Freak wants to shiny lock Pokemon before you have any Pokeballs. Sometimes, not always, and that is very unfortunate. But I wish this was something they did more often, prevent players from messing up, failing uncatchable shinies. They have tried doing this a few times, for example in Sword and Shield in the wild area, before you had a lot of gym badges. There were Pokemon that were of higher level than you. And those Pokemon most of the time were shiny locked, apart from, the fixed spawn Pokemon that still could be. Game Freak messed it up a bit there, but they were, for the most part, shiny locked, and I appreciate that because you were not able to catch those Pokemon. It makes sense. And I really hope Game Freak does this more often. Like, I would be completely fine with Game Freak just, like, changing the game. Like, if you have no Pokeballs at all in your bag, shinies would be just completely impossible to spawn. I would be completely fine with that option. Another weird reason that I have seen Game Freak do, and this one, I can't really explain why, but for some reason, in a lot of the modern games, all gift Pokemon have been shiny locked. And I don't know why. And I'm not just talking about like event Pokemon that you get from like visiting somewhere and then the guy at the Pokemon Center gives you a legendary Pokemon. No. All gift Pokemon. All Pokemon that are basically given to you. Look at Pokemon Sword and Shield, for example. You get from, I think it was Route 5, you get a normal Toxel. Toxel, you can basically grab it from anywhere else. It spawns in the wild, you can hatch it from an egg. But this Toxel that you are just given is shiny locked. Same thing with the starters, actually. The starters in Pokemon Sword and Shield are shiny locked when you first get them at the beginning of the game. But you can just later on, when you visit the daycare, you can just breed them to be shiny. But for some reason, they're just shiny locked in the beginning. For that, you could say it's a story reason to, just get on with it and go play the game, have fun. But all gift Pokemon, it's a little bit weird, and this is one that I just can't explain why it happens. Now for the last one. I hope that at this point you understand most of the reasons why shiny locks happen. But then you might be thinking to yourself, okay, but what about the most recent games? What about games like Pokemon Legends Arceus and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? They had a lot of shiny locks on very specific Pokemon, a lot of them legendaries. But still, it was a bit weird. Pokemon like Gimmighoul, all of the Gimmighoul in the game are shiny locked, apart from events. But why is that? It is a bit weird. I was wondering this myself at first, and I think the reason is just simply Game Freak doesn't really know how to do those encounters in a way that would be friendly towards shiny hunters. A lot of the legendaries, a lot of Gimmighouls and stuff are in the overworld. And in Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, there are two things different than in regular Pokemon games. One, you can see shinies in the overworld, which is, hey, a pretty cool new update. I'm glad they added that. But the other thing is that encounters also happen in the overworld. If you encounter a Pokemon in Sword and Shield, the previous game, you get into the whole battle sequence. This one. But in Scarlet and Violet, the battle just begins. It's in the overworld. You can see all of the items, all the trainers, all of the other Pokemon around you. And I think that kind of broke how shiny encounters would work. If it wasn't like that, then you would have to have the legendary be shiny in the overworld in cutscenes and everything. And I think there's something just for Game Freak that they just couldn't logically make this happen. And it's really a shame because Scarlet and Violet as well has a lot of legendaries returning in the DLC, but none of them can be shiny hunted. While in Sword and Shield, there was a way to get them as shinies. So yeah, it's a bit weird, but it is what it is. Hopefully this video did educate you a little bit on how shiny locks work and why they exist. and I don't really have anything else to say here. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I will just see you guys next time. Bye bye.